been involved with over the last year. But first, a little note on why we exist and who we are. The Lake Erie Committee has developed some fish community goals for Lake Erie, particularly a cool water fishery in the western, central, and nearshore waters of the eastern basin, as well as a cold water fish community in the offshore portions of the eastern basin. To help augment those goals, they've also come up with 13 fish community objectives. And many of those objectives fall under the realm of habitat and habitat availability. In addition, 10 environmental objectives have been developed for Lake Erie, and those include 3 objectives that oversee natural processes in the lake, 4 objectives that affect our fish communities, and 3 objectives that influence habitat degradation. The Habitat Task Group was formed to help the Lake Erie Committee accomplish these goals and objectives. And we do that in 3 very general ways. We have specific tasks that are assigned to us, but we essentially address these in 3 very general ways. First, we provide habitat-related direction, particularly to research and to the restoration activities that may take place in the basin. We, as individuals working for agencies, also participate in research, habitat-related research projects. And finally, we also, when we get a chance, those of us that are lucky get to actually put a shovel in the water or the mud or whatever, so to speak, and do some restoration work ourselves. And so I'd like to talk today about the ways that we, some of the things specifically in 2015 we've done to support the environmental objectives and the fish community goals and objectives. And I'll talk about the direction. So we acknowledge, first and foremost, that there are a lot of needs when it comes to habitat work in Lake Erie. There are a lot of knowledge gaps and the need for research and other activities to fill those needs. Particularly, we recognize that there are some needs as far as the development of restoration techniques. There is a need for us to continue collecting, mapping underwater substrate and mapping data, and also the need to develop linkages between the fish communities that we're managing and different habitat types or even shoreline or other structures. As we gain knowledge in these areas, we develop the tools that we need to protect or enhance or restore fish habitat, but we also need places where we can get the most bang for our buck as far as habitat work, getting the largest impact over the shortest response time. The Lake Erie Committee has tasked us with, one of our tasks is developing and maintaining a list of these key functional habitats and priority management areas in Lake Erie that have been identified in documents like the fish community goals and objectives and the environmental objectives. You can see areas highlighted around the lake that have been identified in some of those reports or some of those documents. And we've been asked to assist the Lake Erie Committee in an exercise of prioritizing those areas for restoration work or for involvement by the Lake Committee and others, the applicators around the lake. The way that we're going about this is currently we are combining known information with expert opinion and using that to identify priority management areas for select species that have been identified by the Fish Community Goals and Objectives documents, and at multiple life stages, so spawning adults, surviving eggs, and larval and juvenile fish. The way that we're going about that is an exercise with an Excel template that the Lake Erie Committee has developed for us. We are populating this spreadsheet with various life stages and various challenges that have been identified in some of these documents as limiting the fish communities. We have been working on this already. We have provided some feedback to the Lake Erie Committee and expect that to be instrumental in the development of a list of priority management areas to go out to applicators lake-wide. The Habitat Task Group has also been involved in supporting the GLAF, Great Lakes Aquatic Habitat Framework Project over the last few years. We've reported on some of our support, providing data and giving feedback to them. About a month ago, during our task group meeting, we were given an opportunity to test the Explorer tool, which has been developed by this project, which is an online tool that gives people access to databases and habitat suitability indices that they can use to further their own work. I believe that this Explorer tool, or this link, is going live in a day or so. I believe it was April 1st is when they were planning on having that available. But we have been involved in this project for quite a while and are excited to see its potential being reached and hope people use it. We've also been providing direction with side scan sonar collections. Many agencies around the lake are collecting side scan data using various side scan tools. We have been, or several members of our task group have been instrumental in providing some direction and guidance to agencies who are interested in either purchasing or fine-tuning the equipment that they're using, and also providing some expertise on the processing software that's available. We're doing this in hopes that at some time in the near future we'll be able to provide a workshop to give folks who are interested in collecting side scan data perhaps a leg up on how to best collect that data and make the best use of it. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the research projects that the Habitat Task Group has been involved with. A couple of those projects have taken place on the Maumee River over the last couple of years, where they are using substrate and depth information to evaluate the amount of available suitable spawning habitat for walleye and also for other species. This project is a collaboration between Fish and Wildlife Service and the University of Toledo to look at walleye spawning habitat in the Maumee River. And also, as part of that, they collected not only did they look at suitable depths and substrates, but they also collected eggs at various locations to verify what they're reporting. A similar project was taking place at the University of Toledo with lake sturgeon restoration. This is preliminary work looking at habitat suitability in the Maumee River for larval sturgeon and also for spawning adult lake sturgeon. And their early findings, they haven't completed their model yet, but the early findings suggest that there is an opportunity in the Maumee River to move forward with lake sturgeon restoration. Also, in 2015, 2 additional reefs have been constructed in the Detroit River. The first is a 4-acre reef at Grassy Island, and the second is a smaller test reef at Fort Wayne. Those reefs, those projects include extensive biological and physical monitoring, not only looking at what species are utilizing those reefs, but also looking at in-river processes that may shorten the lifespan of those reefs. In Ohio, work continues at the Middle Harbor wetland. It's a coastal wetland. This project provided access or reconnection to Lake Erie for about 350 acres of coastal wetland. This project, installing this structure, took place actually in late 2011. The reason why I mention it now is as with many wetland restoration projects, the folks that are behind the driver's seat for these projects are from the wetland or waterfowl side. It wasn't until just this winter that we finally got permission to open up all of the gates and fish exclusion devices that have been implemented there, and we now have open flowing connection between Middle Harbor and Lake Erie. We're using this as an opportunity to start a pilot DIDSON project looking at fish species composition and hopefully numbers of fish that are passing through this structure. And hopefully this gives us information down the road that will help us better balance the needs of the waterfowl folks and the needs of fish in these coastal wetlands and provide mutual benefits for both. An additional project spearheaded by Dr. Jeff Steinhardt and Ohio Sea Grant, the Nature Conservancy, looked at some of these wetland connection structures that have been created over the last several years, and whether or not they are actually providing fish passage. These 4 indices, 3 of the 4 show that of the structures that are in place, only the open culvert has a similar fish community inside the wetland as it does outside the wetland. And that some of the fish passage structures that have been put in place are not necessarily functioning as such for various reasons. This figure highlights that again. The dark line, horizontal line on there represents the wetland fish index for a series of 8 connected wetlands, and comparing the fish communities inside and outside the wetland and these Ohio wetlands to that shows that the only fish passage structure that seems to have a similar community inside and out and comes closest to the standard is the open culvert design. That may or may not be completely feasible when dealing with other competing goals for wetland connection and restoration. However, we're hopeful that some of the work that we're doing in Middle Harbor and other places will provide some direction there. And finally, restoration projects that are going on throughout the basin. Shoreline softening projects are taking place in the St. Clair River as well as in the Upper Niagara River. These projects are beneficial to multiple fish species, but also to herps and for other species, providing areas for submerged aquatic macrophytes to grow while maintaining a somewhat natural shoreline process in those areas. We are, members of the task group are interested to see how these pan out and whether there's application in the Lake Erie near shore for similar projects. The Clinton River area of concern in the upper St. Clair, Lake St. Clair watershed has received, there's 11 projects that are going on up there throughout the watershed, ranging from reconnecting floodplains to natural channel designs and bank stabilization. It also includes a coastal wetland at the mouth of the Clinton River where it flows into Lake St. Clair. These projects are funded through GLRI and are supposed to be completed this year in 2016. In New York, the repair of the Chautauqua Creek restoration activities that took place a few years ago have been completed. These repairs this project was first done several years ago to allow for fish passage through two dams on the river. It was washed out by the Superstorm Sandy several years ago and now has been repaired and replaced and is functioning once again. In addition to those getting fixed, they're looking forward to this lower railroad trestle project this summer that will raise the pool level and allow for non-leaping, non-jumping species to access the upper part of the river or the creek as well. And in the nearby here, in the upper Niagara River, Strawberry Island is a project that's seen some headway this year. It's historically there was a wetland and submerged aquatic macrophyte community within this island that's been degraded over the last couple of years. This year, researchers and agency went in there to do some restoration work, creating a additional island to help buffer the Strawberry Island from wave action, and planting or installing some logs to prevent wave action from eroding the island and the wetlands in general. And I know we'll hear more about this tomorrow. So, in conclusion, I wanted to acknowledge all of the members and most of the contributors. There's a few that slipped through at the very end. You can find a full list of people who have been involved in the Habitat Task Group report and this presentation, and a better list of projects going on around the basin in our annual report, which should be available on the Fish Commission website shortly. And there is an executive summary that is available out on the table outside. With that, I thank you for your time.